The security camera caught everything. Every calculated smile, every whispered conversation, every moment my daughter-in-law thought she was being clever. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. From that crisp November afternoon when I stood on my son's doorstep, pumpkin pie still warm in my hands, and heard the words that would change everything. "You're not welcome here, Helen." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Those 4 words, delivered by my daughter-in-law Andrea through a barely cracked door, hit me like ice water. Behind her, I could hear the sounds of family gathering, laughter mixing with the clatter of dishes, the television broadcasting the parade I'd watched every Thanksgiving since I was 5 years old. Only this year I was watching it alone in my empty house before driving over with dessert, believing until this very moment that the missing invitation had been an oversight. "I don't understand," I said, my voice smaller than I intended. "It's Thanksgiving. Not anymore." Andrea's perfectly manicured hand gripped the doorframe, her wedding ring catching the afternoon light. The ring my mother's diamond had been reset into. "This is our home, our holiday. We've decided to start our own traditions." Through the narrow gap, I glimpsed my son Nathan in the background, hovering uncertainly by the staircase. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second before he looked away, disappearing into the kitchen like a ghost. My son, who I'd raised alone after his father died, who I'd worked 2 jobs to put through college, who used to call me every Sunday without fail, until Andrea entered the picture 2 years ago. The drive home that afternoon was the longest 20 minutes of my life. The pie sat in the passenger seat like a mockery, its golden crust pristine and untouched. I'd spent the morning making it from scratch, using my grandmother's recipe. The same one I'd been making since Nathan was old enough to stand on a chair and help me roll dough. He always loved stealing bits of apple filling when he thought I wasn't looking. My phone sat silent on the console. No text from Nathan explaining, apologizing, or even acknowledging what had just happened. No call from my daughter Melissa, who lived across the country in Seattle. The family group chat I'd created years ago to keep everyone connected showed my last message from 3 days prior. "Looking forward to seeing everyone Thursday. Should I bring my famous apple pie too?" No one had responded. I pulled into my garage and sat there in the darkening space, engine off, trying to make sense of how I'd gotten here. At 63, I thought I understood my place in the world. I was Helen Morrison, retired teaching assistant, widow of 12 years, mother of 2, grandmother to Melissa's twin boys who I saw twice a year on FaceTime. I was the woman who never missed a school play, who drove through snowstorms for basketball games, who kept every report card and homemade Mother's Day card in carefully labeled boxes in the attic. Now I was the woman standing in her kitchen at 4 in the afternoon on Thanksgiving, eating pie directly from the pan because there was no one to share it with. The house felt different in its emptiness. Not the familiar solitude I'd grown accustomed to since Richard's death, but a hollow, echoing loneliness that seemed to press against the walls. I moved through the rooms like a sleepwalker, noting details I usually ignored. The photographs covering the mantel, documenting decades of Christmases and birthdays and graduations. Nathan featured prominently in most of them, his smile evolving from gap-toothed childhood to confident young man. When had that smile started feeling forced in our recent photos? When had the monthly dinners become quarterly, then barely annual? I tried to pinpoint the moment things shifted, but change, I was learning, rarely announces itself. It creeps in like fog, obscuring the landscape so gradually you don't realize you're lost until you can't see the path back. My laptop sat closed on the kitchen counter where I'd left it that morning, back when I still believed I had a family to share the holiday with. I opened it now, desperate for distraction, and found myself scrolling through Facebook. My feed bloomed with thankfulness, Friends posting photos of groaning tables surrounded by multiple generations. Former colleagues sharing gratitude lists. Distant relatives I hadn't seen in years broadcasting their abundance. I closed the laptop. The silence was suffocating. I turned on the television, flipping past football games and holiday movies until I landed on a cooking show. The host was demonstrating how to properly baste a turkey, and I found myself laughing, bitterly. All those years perfecting my turkey technique, adjusting cooking times and herb combinations based on Nathan's feedback. More rosemary, Mom. Try adding honey to the glaze. This is perfect. Don't change a thing. Apparently, Andrea's turkey was better. Or maybe it wasn't about the turkey at all. My phone buzzed, and my heart leaped with pathetic hope. Nathan, finally. An explanation, an apology, an invitation to come back for dessert. But it was just a promotional email from the grocery store, advertising Black Friday sales on items I had no reason to buy. Who needs a 20-pound turkey when you're cooking for one? As evening descended, I found myself in Nathan's old room, unchanged since he'd moved out 8 years ago. Baseball trophies lined the shelf above a desk still scattered with college. Acceptance letters I'd been too sentimental to throw away. I sat on the twin bed, remembering nights spent here when he was sick, reading stories until his fever broke, discussing his dreams and fears in the safe cocoon of darkness. Had I been a good mother? The question ambushed me with its intensity. I'd certainly tried. After Richard's sudden heart attack when Nathan was 15 and Melissa was 13, I'd poured everything into keeping our family afloat. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe I'd poured too much, leaving myself empty, becoming the kind of mother children feel obligated to include rather than genuinely want around. But Melissa still called. Not as often as I'd like, but she called. Our relationship had its own complications, the natural strain of distance and different life phases, but she'd never shut me out completely. She'd texted that morning, a brief, "Happy Thanksgiving, Mom. Crazy day with the boys, but thinking of you," that I now realized made no mention of my plans with Nathan. Had she known? Had everyone known except me? I retrieved my phone and started typing a message to Melissa, then deleted it. Started again. Deleted again. What could I say that wouldn't sound pathetic? Your brother's wife banned me from Thanksgiving? I'm eating pie alone in my pajamas? I don't understand what I did wrong. Instead, I replied with a simple heart emoji and set the phone aside. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay in bed, replaying every interaction with Andrea, searching for clues I'd missed. She'd always been cool toward me, but I'd attributed that to personality differences. She was sleek and polished where I was comfortable and casual. She worked in marketing for a tech startup, speaking a language of metrics and disruption I didn't understand. During our increasingly rare dinners, she'd check her phone constantly, answering work emails while I tried to make conversation. Nathan would apologize for her. You know how demanding her job is, Mom. She's under a lot of pressure with the new product launch. She doesn't mean to be rude. Except, maybe she did. The first time I'd met Andrea, at a restaurant, Nathan had chosen in the city, she'd looked me up and down with an expression I couldn't quite read. I'd worn my best dress, the navy one with small flowers that I saved for special occasions. Later, she'd suggested to Nathan that perhaps I might be more comfortable at the chain restaurant near my house, where the atmosphere was more relaxed. I'd laughed it off at the time, missing the implication that I was too unsophisticated for her preferred venues. There had been other moments, the Christmas gift of a spa day that felt less like generosity and more like criticism. The Mother's Day when they gave me a gift card instead of having me over, explaining they were just too busy with work. The wedding invitation that arrived late, placing me at a table with distant relatives while Andrea's mother sat at the family table with the bride and groom. I'd made excuses for all of it. Modern life was busy. Young couples needed space. I didn't want to be the overbearing mother-in-law that sitcoms mocked. So I'd stepped back, waited for invitations rather than assuming, called less frequently to avoid seeming needy. Now I wondered if I'd simply made it easier for them to ease me out entirely. Morning came gray and drizzling, matching my mood. I made coffee and stood at the kitchen window, watching neighbors return from Black Friday shopping, arms full of bags and possibility. The Wheelers from 2 houses down were decorating for Christmas already, stringing lights with the help of their grandchildren. Mrs. Wheeler saw me at the window and waved cheerfully. I waved back and quickly stepped away before she could see my face. The refrigerator was full of food I'd prepared for yesterday, side dishes I'd planned to contribute, ingredients for the meal I thought I'd be sharing. I opened container after container, green bean casserole, my special cornbread stuffing, homemade cranberry sauce with the perfect balance of tart and sweet. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Each dish represented hours of preparation and years of refinement based on family feedback. "Your stuffing is the best part of Thanksgiving," Nathan used to say. Apparently not anymore. I couldn't bear to eat any of it. Instead, I made toast and sat at my small dining table, the one I'd bought after Richard died because the old one felt too big for just me. Outside, the rain intensified, turning the world watercolor soft through my window. My phone rang just after 9. Melissa. "Hi, Mom. How was your Thanksgiving?" The casual question broke something in me. Before I could stop myself, the whole story poured out. The closed door, Andrea's cold dismissal, Nathan's cowardly disappearance, the pie I'd eaten alone in my kitchen. Melissa's silence stretched long enough that I checked to make sure we hadn't been disconnected. "That bitch," she finally said, with enough venom to make me simultaneously flinch and feel validated. I knew she was controlling, but this is next level. "You knew she was controlling?" "Mom, come on." She's been systematically cutting Nathan off from everyone. First his college friends, then his work buddies. I'm barely allowed to talk to him anymore without going through her. This was news to me. Nathan had always been social, surrounded by friends who appreciated his easy humor and loyalty. I'd noticed he mentioned them less lately, but assumed it was natural adult progression. "Why didn't you tell me?" Melissa sighed. "What would you have done?" "Nathan's a grown man. He's choosing this. And honestly, Mom, I didn't think she'd go after you. You're the least threatening person in the world." The phrase stung more than she probably intended. The least threatening person in the world. Is that how my children saw me? Harmless, ineffectual, someone to be managed rather than respected? "I have to go," I said, though we both knew I had nowhere to be. "The boys must be up by now." "Mom, wait. Don't let her win. Don't just disappear because she wants you to." But I'd already been disappearing, hadn't I? Inch by inch, year by year, becoming less mother and more obligation, less person and more problem to be solved. After we hung up, I wandered the house aimlessly. Every room held memories that now felt tainted. The dining room where we'd hosted Nathan's high school graduation party, Andrea not yet in the picture. The living room where he'd announced his engagement, Andrea's diamond catching the light as she'd smiled that sharp smile. The kitchen where I'd taught him to cook, skills he now used to prepare meals I'd never be invited to share. By afternoon, anger had replaced hurt. How dare she? How dare this woman who'd known my son for 3 years presume to erase 3 decades of history? And how dare Nathan let her? I picked up my phone and typed out a message to him. "We need to talk about yesterday." The response came quickly. "At work, can't talk now." It was Black Friday. His office was closed. The lie was so transparent, it insulted my intelligence. "I know you're not at work," I typed back. This time, Nothing. The message showed as read, but no response came. An hour passed. 2. I stared at my phone like a teenager waiting for a crush to text back, hating myself for the desperation but unable to stop. Finally, as darkness began to fall again, a longer message appeared. Mom, I'm sorry about yesterday. Andrea feels like you don't respect our boundaries. She thinks some space would be good for everyone. Maybe we can meet for coffee in a few weeks and talk about it. I read it 3 times, each word a small wound. Andrea feels. Andrea thinks. Not a single expression of his own thoughts or feelings. And boundaries. What boundaries had I crossed? The boundary of existing? Of being his mother? I started to type a dozen different responses. Angry ones that would burn bridges. Pleading ones that would sacrifice dignity. Reasonable ones that would be ignored. In the end, I wrote simply, I love you. He didn't respond. The weekend stretched before me, empty as a desert. I'd declined invitations from friends, assuming I'd be with family. Pride kept me from calling them now, admitting my humiliation. Instead, I cleaned with fierce determination, scrubbing floors that didn't need scrubbing, organizing closets that were already neat. In the basement, I found boxes of Nathan's childhood belongings I'd saved. Report cards praising his kindness and creativity. Art projects made with construction paper and too much glue. A Mother's Day card from 2nd grade. My mom is the best because she reads to me and makes good cookies and never gets mad when I'm sick. I sat on the basement floor and cried until my eyes burned. Sunday night, I made a decision. If Andrea wanted to play games, if Nathan wanted to choose sides, fine. But I wouldn't simply fade away. I'd been a doormat for too long, stepping aside, to avoid conflict, prioritizing everyone else's comfort over my own dignity. Tomorrow, I would call my friend Janet, who worked as a paralegal at a law firm downtown. I had questions about grandparents' rights, about property and trust, about things Andrea might not know existed. Because while my daughter-in-law might have won this round, she'd made a critical error. She'd underestimated me, and as I would soon discover, she'd done something else too, something that would change everything. But that revelation was still days away, waiting in pixels and timestamps on a security camera she didn't know existed. In a lawyer's office she had no idea I'd been visiting for months before that fateful Thanksgiving. For now, I sat in my empty house, no longer the grieving mother, but something harder and more determined. The least threatening person in the world was about to become a problem Andrea never saw coming. Monday morning arrived with unexpected sunshine, the kind that makes November feel like fall spring. I'd barely slept, my mind churning with plans half-formed and questions unanswered. Janet agreed to meet me for lunch, her voice carefully neutral when I'd called to ask about legal matters involving family property. "Are you sure you want to go down this road?" she asked, as we sat in the corner booth of a quiet cafe downtown. Janet had been through her own divorce wars and understood the scorched earth that legal battles could create. "I need to understand my options," I said, pushing salad around my plate. "There are things Andrea doesn't know about, things that involve Nathan's future." Janet leaned forward, her paralegal instincts sharpening. "What kind of things?" I took a breath. When Richard died, his life insurance was substantial. More than anyone knew. I've been living modestly, saving most of it. There's also the college fund I never touched because Nathan got scholarships. And I hesitated, then continued. Richard's mother left everything to Nathan in trust, with me as executor until he turns 40 or gets married. He got married, but Andrea doesn't know about the trust. Nathan asked me to delay transferring it because he wanted to surprise her after their first anniversary. But their anniversary was 6 months ago. Yes, and every time I bring it up, he has an excuse, I think. I think he's having second thoughts about giving her access to it. Janet's expression was grim. How much are we talking about? Between the trust and what I've saved? Close to $500,000. She whistled low. And Andrea has no idea? None. Nathan made me promise not to mention it, said he wanted to handle it his way. I laughed bitterly. I've kept so many of his secrets over the years, protected him, covered for him, enabled him. Maybe that's why he thinks he can treat me this way now. Helen, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Do you think Andrea is after the money? The question hung between us like a blade. I'd been dancing around it in my mind all weekend, but hearing it voiced aloud made it real. I don't know. Maybe. She comes from money herself, but her family cut her off when she dropped out of her MBA program to marry Nathan. She acts successful, but I've noticed things. The designer bags that are really good knockoffs. The way she always lets Nathan pay when we go out. How she pushed him to ask for a raise he wasn't ready for. Janet pulled out her phone, typing, "Notes. I'm going to give you Marcus Washington's number. He's one of our senior partners, specializes in estate law. But Helen, if you start this process, things could get ugly. Andrea will see it as a threat. She already sees me as a threat. At least this way I'm a threat with lawyers." That afternoon, I found myself in Marcus Washington's office, a space that smelled of leather and old books. He was younger than I'd expected, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a way of listening that made me feel heard rather than judged. "Your friend Janet filled me in on the basics," he said, settling behind his desk. "But I'd like to hear the full story. From you." So I told him everything. Richard's death, raising the children alone, Nathan's relationship with Andrea, the gradual erosion of our closeness, and finally, Thanksgiving's brutal rejection. He took notes in careful handwriting, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "The trust is straightforward," he said when I finished. "As executor, you have not just the right, but the obligation to ensure it's handled properly. The fact that Nathan has been deflecting for 6 months is concerning. We can request an accounting, make sure everything is above board. I don't want to hurt my son. I just want to understand what's happening." Marcus leaned back, considering. "In my experience, financial secrets in a marriage rarely stay contained. They spread, poisoning everything they touch. Your son may be trying to protect the trust from his wife, but in doing so, he's put you in an impossible position." He was right, of course. Nathan had made me complicit in keeping a massive secret from his wife, then allowed that same wife to banish me from their lives. The irony was sharp enough to cut. "There's something else," Marcus said, his tone shifting. "Our security system is quite comprehensive. Every meeting is recorded for legal protection. If Andrea has been here for any reason, we'd have footage." My heart skipped. Why would Andrea have been here? That's what we need to find out. Janet mentioned she works in marketing for a tech startup. We've been working with several startups on patent issues. It's possible. He trailed off, already turning to his computer. "Let me check our client files." The next 20 minutes felt like hours as Marcus searched through databases and records. Finally, he stopped, his expression unreadable. "Technova Solutions. We handled their Series B funding documentation last year. Andrea Morrison was listed as their marketing director." He looked up at me. "She's been here at least 3 times for meetings." The room seemed to tilt. "Can you check the security? Footage?" "I'll need to follow proper channels, but given that you're now a client with legitimate interest in trust matters that may involve her, yes. Give me a few days." I left his office with my head spinning. Andrea had been in the building multiple times. Was it just coincidence? Richmond wasn't a huge city. There were only so many law firms that handled tech startup work. But something nagged at me, a feeling that there was more to uncover. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened a bottle of wine and called my sister Patricia in Florida. We'd grown distant since she retired there 5 years ago. Our lives diverging into different rhythms. Helen, what a surprise. How was your Thanksgiving? I took a long sip of wine. Patty, I need to tell you something. She listened without interrupting as I poured out the whole story. Unlike my measured conversation with Melissa, this was raw, unfiltered emotion. By the end, I was crying again, but they were different tears, angry ones. That little witch, Patricia said when I finished. Remember when we were kids and that girl in your class tried to exclude you from her birthday? Party? What did Mom tell you? Despite everything, I smiled. That Morrison women don't get pushed around. We push back. Exactly. So what's your plan? I'm not sure yet, but I'm done being passive, done being the understanding mother-in-law who doesn't make waves. Good. It's about time you remembered who you are. You were valedictorian, Helen. You ran the entire school volunteer program while working full-time and raising 2 kids alone. You're not some helpless old woman who can be discarded. Her words sparked something in me. She was right. Somewhere along the way, I'd let grief and loneliness reshape me into someone smaller, quieter, less. But that wasn't who I'd always been. After we hung up, I pulled out a legal pad and started making lists. Not the usual grocery lists or errand reminders, but strategic plans. What I knew, what I suspected, what I needed to find out. By midnight, I had filled 3 pages with notes and questions. Tuesday brought an unexpected text from Nathan. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? Just the 2 of us. My first instinct was to jump at the chance. Then I remembered Marcus's advice about documenting everything. I screenshot the message and replied, yes, Starbucks on Main Street, 10 a.m. Neutral ground, public space, witnesses if needed. I spent the rest of the day preparing, not just emotionally, but practically. I made copies of trust documents, gathered bank statements showing my years of careful saving, printed emails from Nathan about delaying the trust transfer. If he wanted to talk, we would talk facts, not feelings. Wednesday morning, I arrived at Starbucks 15 minutes early, claiming a corner table with clear sightlines. Nathan showed up right on time, looking haggard. His usual neat appearance was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes. Hi, Mom. He sat across from me, clutching a coffee cup like a lifeline. Thanks for meeting me. Of course. I kept my voice neutral, channeling Marcus's professional demeanor. What did you want to discuss? He seemed taken aback by my businesslike tone. I wanted to apologize for Thanksgiving. I should have called you, warned you. But you didn't. You let me show up with pie and be humiliated at your doorstep. Andrea said she told you not to come. I stared at him. When? When did she supposedly tell me this? She said she texted you earlier in the week. I pulled out my phone, showed him our message history. The last text from Andrea was from October, a group message about changing their email addresses. She lied to you, Nathan. Or you're lying to me. Which is it? His face flushed. She must have. Maybe she forgot. Stop. Just stop. We both know she didn't forget anything. She planned this, and you went along with it. What I want to know is why. He slumped in his chair, suddenly looking far older than his 32 years. It's complicated, Mom. Then uncomplicate it. I'm your mother. I've earned the truth. For a long moment, he stared into his coffee. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. She thinks you're trying to control me. Control us. The money you've saved, the trust from Grandma. She says you use it to manipulate me. Have I ever held money over your head? Ever threatened to withhold anything? No, but no buts. I've never even mentioned the money to Andrea because you asked me not to. How can I manipulate with something she doesn't know exists? His silence was answer enough. She knows, doesn't she? I said slowly. Somehow she found out about the trust. Nathan's hands trembled around his cup. I don't know how. I never told her. But last month she started asking questions, mentioned that Grandma had been wealthy, wondered if there was inheritance. I denied it, but she didn't believe you. She accused me of hiding assets, said it was financial infidelity. We had a huge fight. He looked up at me, eyes pleading. That's why she banned you from Thanksgiving. She thinks you're helping me hide money from her. The pieces were clicking into place, but the picture they formed made no sense. How had Andrea found out about the trust, and why was she so focused on money she had no legal right to? Nathan, I need you to be completely honest with me. Is your marriage in trouble? He laughed, a sound devoid of humor. Trouble? Mom, I've been sleeping in my office for 2 weeks. She's threatening divorce if I don't give her full access to all finances, including whatever I'm hiding. My heart broke for him, even as anger flared at his choices. Why didn't you tell me? Why let her treat me this way if your marriage is already falling apart? Because she said if I involved you, she'd make sure I never saw you again. She'd claim alienation of affection, say you poisoned our marriage. Her friend is a divorce attorney. She knows exactly what threats to make. I reached across the table, covered his hand with mine. For the first time in days, I felt like his mother again. Oh, Nathan, how did it get this bad? I don't know. It happened so gradually. First, she didn't like my friends. Then my hobbies took too much time. Then my family was too involved. Before I knew it, I was isolated from everyone except her. And now she wants everything, including money that isn't even hers to want. We need to get you help. A lawyer of your own? Someone who… No. He pulled his hand back. I can't. She monitors everything. Our bank accounts, my phone, my email. She'd know immediately. Then, how are you here now? I told her I was meeting a client. She'll check. Of course. She always does, but my assistant will cover for me. The level of control Andrea exerted was disturbing. This wasn't just a difficult marriage. It was something darker. Nathan, what you're describing, it's abuse. Financial, emotional abuse. Men can't be abused by their wives, he said, automatically, then seemed to hear himself. Can they? Yes, they can. And you need help. He shook his head, standing abruptly. I shouldn't have come. This was a mistake. Just stay away, Mom. For your own good. Andrea's not someone you want as an enemy. Nathan, wait. But he was already walking away, shoulders hunched against more than just the November wind. I sat in that Starbucks for another hour, processing what I'd learned. My son was trapped in an abusive marriage. His wife had somehow discovered the trust and was using it as leverage, and I was caught in the middle, painted as the villain in Andrea's narrative. My phone buzzed. Marcus, Washington. Helen, can you come to my office this afternoon? We've reviewed the security footage, and there's something you need to see. The urgency in his voice sent chills down my spine. Whatever was on that footage, it was significant. 2 hours later, I sat in Marcus's conference room as he pulled up video files on a large monitor. This is from 6 weeks ago, he said, clicking play. October 15th, 2:47 p.m. The black and white footage showed the law firm's lobby. Andrea entered, dressed in a sharp business suit, but she wasn't alone. A man walked beside her, tall and distinguished, with silver hair and an expensive overcoat. Do you recognize him? Marcus asked. I shook my head. That's Douglas Hartley. He's a forensic accountant who specializes in uncovering hidden assets in divorce cases. My blood ran cold. 6 weeks ago? But Nathan said their problems only started last month. There's more. Marcus clicked to another file. This is from September 3rd. The same lobby, but this time Andrea was with a different companion. A woman in her 40s with severe features and a briefcase that screamed expensive attorney. Diane Crawford, Marcus said, one of the city's most aggressive divorce lawyers, known for taking husbands to the cleaners. But in September, Nathan thought everything was fine. They went to Bermuda for their anniversary. Marcus gave me a meaningful look. In my experience, when someone meets with a forensic accountant and a divorce attorney months before their spouse knows there's a problem, they're planning something. The question is what? He pulled up a third file. This is where it gets interesting. October 30th, 1 week before Thanksgiving. This time, the footage showed Andrea in the building's parking garage. She was on her phone, pacing beside her car, clearly agitated. The video had no audio, but her body language screamed frustration. "Watch this part carefully," Marcus said, zooming in. Andrea ended her call and threw her phone into her car. Then, she pulled out a second phone from her purse. A second phone. Why would she have two phones? I asked, though I suspected the answer. Usually, to keep certain communications private, hidden from a spouse who might check phone records. Can we find out who she was calling? Not from this footage, but Helen, there's one more thing. Marcus pulled up a final file. This is from yesterday. November 28th, 4:22 p.m. My breath caught. Yesterday, when Nathan was supposedly at work. The footage showed Andrea entering the building again, this time alone. But what she carried made my heart stop. In her hands was a manila folder, and visible on the outside was a label I could read even in the grainy footage. Morrison Trust. Confidential. How did she get trust documents? I whispered. That's what we need to find out. But Helen, if she's been investigating Nathan's finances without his knowledge, if she's been planning this since September, you and Nathan both need protection. This isn't just a marital dispute. This is something else entirely. I left Marcus's office with a flash drive containing the footage and a recommendation for a private investigator. My quiet life had suddenly become a thriller, complete with secret phones, hidden agendas, and a daughter-in-law who was clearly playing a game I was only beginning to understand. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I deadbolted my doors, checked every window, and slept with my phone beside my bed. Because if Andrea had been planning this for months, if she'd somehow accessed confidential trust documents, then Nathan's warning echoed in my mind. Andrea's not someone you want as an enemy. But enemy or not, she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated the Morrison women. And as my mother used to say, we don't get pushed around. We push back. The private investigator Marcus recommended turned out to be a former police detective, named Carla Rodriguez. She sat across from me in my living room, reviewing the evidence we'd gathered, her expression growing more serious with each revelation. "Mrs. Morrison, what I'm seeing here is a pattern of calculated financial manipulation," she said, closing her notebook. "But to prove it, we need more than suspicion. We need concrete evidence of fraud or theft. How do we get that? First, we need to understand how she accessed those trust documents. Who else has copies? I thought carefully. Just the law firm, the bank where the trust is held, and me. I keep them in a safety deposit box. When did you last check the box? A chill ran through me. Not since last Christmas. I added some bonds Nathan gave me to hold. Carla leaned forward. We need to check that box. Today. An hour later, we stood in the bank's vault room as I opened my safety deposit box with trembling hands. Everything seemed to be there, until I looked closer. The documents were all present, but they were slightly out of order. Someone had been through them. The bank manager, I said suddenly. Andrea's cousin works here. She helped us set up Nathan's accounts when they got married. Sarah, I think her name was. Carla's eyes sharpened. That's our connection. Bank employees can't legally access customer boxes, but they can facilitate it if they're willing to break protocol. We need to pull the access logs. While Carla worked on that angle, I returned home to find an unexpected visitor. Melissa stood on my doorstep, having flown in from Seattle without warning. "Mom," she said, enveloping me in a hug. "I couldn't stay away. Not after what's happening." Over tea, I caught her up on everything. Her face cycled through shock, anger, and determination. "I knew something was off at their wedding," she said. "The way Andrea kept Nathan away from everyone during the reception. The way she gave that toast about starting fresh and leaving the past behind. It felt like a threat even then." I thought I was being oversensitive. "No, Mom, you were seeing clearly. We all just wanted Nathan to be happy so badly that we ignored the red flags." That evening, Nathan called. His voice was strained, barely above a whisper. "Mom, I'm at the grocery store. It's the only place Andrea doesn't track me. I need to warn you. She knows you hired a lawyer. She's furious." "How does she know?" "She has a friend who works at the courthouse. Any filing with our names gets flagged. Mom, she's planning something. I heard her on the phone with someone talking about accelerating the timeline." "Nathan, you need to leave. Come here, or go to a hotel, anywhere safe." "I can't. She'll destroy me financially. She has screenshots of texts she's taken out. Of context, recordings of arguments where she goaded me into saying things. She's built a case that I'm unstable, hiding assets, emotionally abusive. Everything she's actually doing, she's documented as me doing to her." The sophistication of Andrea's manipulation was staggering. This wasn't a crime of passion or greed. This was a long-term strategic assault on my son's life. "There has to be evidence of her lies," I said. "Something that proves she's fabricating this. Maybe on her second phone, the one she thinks I don't know about. But I've never been able to find it." After Nathan hung up, I called Carla immediately. The second phone was crucial. If we could access it, we might find evidence of Andrea's conspiracy. The next morning brought a breakthrough. Carla had pulled the bank's access logs, and there it was. Sarah, Andrea's cousin, had accessed the vault room multiple times when I wasn't scheduled to be there. Security footage showed her entering with another woman whose face was obscured but whose build matched Andrea's. "It's enough for the bank to launch an investigation," Carla said. "But we need more to protect Nathan in a divorce. We need that." Second phone. That afternoon, Melissa and I sat in my kitchen, strategizing. My daughter had inherited her father's analytical mind and was attacking the problem like one of her software debugging sessions. "If I were hiding a phone," she mused, "where would I keep it? Not at home where Nathan might find it. Not in my regular purse or car. Somewhere I could access regularly but privately." "Her office?" I suggested. "Maybe, or—" Melissa's eyes lit up. "Mom, does she go to the gym?" "Yes, that expensive one downtown. Nathan complains about the membership fee. Gym lockers, perfect place to hide things. Regular access, private, and Nathan would never go there." It was a solid theory, but how could we confirm it? We couldn't exactly break into a gym. The answer came from an unexpected source. That evening, Janet called with news. "Helen, you're not going to believe this. My daughter goes to the same gym as Andrea. She says Andrea's there every morning at 6, like clockwork. And get this, she always uses the same locker and has for over a year. The gym doesn't even require it. She just insists on that specific one." The pieces were falling into place, but we needed someone on the inside to confirm our suspicions. "Janet, do you think your daughter would be willing to help? After what Andrea did to you on Thanksgiving?" "Absolutely. Lisa's always thought Andrea was a piece of work." The plan we hatched was simple but risky. Lisa would observe Andrea's routine, see if she accessed anything unusual from her locker. Meanwhile, Carla would dig deeper into Andrea's background, looking for patterns of similar behavior. What Carla found sent shockwaves through all of us. Andrea Mitchell isn't her real name, Carla announced at an emergency meeting in Marcus's office. It's Andrea Paulson. She legally changed it 8 years ago after leaving Arizona. Why would she change her name? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. Because Andrea Paulson was involved in a lawsuit. She married a man named Jeffrey Chen, convinced him to put her name on all his assets, then divorced him and took everything. The case was eventually settled out of court, but the details that emerged during discovery were damning. Marcus pulled up court documents on his computer. She used the exact same playbook, isolated him from family, accused him of financial abuse, had mysterious documentation supporting her claims. The only reason she didn't completely destroy him was his sister, was a forensic accountant who found evidence Andrea had fabricated documents. My stomach turned. She's done this before. At least once that we can prove. There may be others. The room fell silent as we absorbed this information. My son hadn't just married a difficult woman. He'd married a professional predator. We need to warn Nathan, Melissa said. We need to do more than that, Marcus replied. We need to get him out safely and protect his assets. Mrs. Morrison, as executor of the trust, you have certain powers. It's time to use them. Over the next 48 hours, we moved quickly. Marcus filed papers freezing the trust, citing concerns about potential fraud. Carla gathered more evidence of Andrea's past, building a profile that would be crucial in court. And Lisa, bless her, confirmed our suspicions about the gym locker. She definitely keeps a phone in there, Lisa reported. I saw her swap them out yesterday. She also had a laptop bag she didn't take to work. The laptop was interesting. What could be on it that she needed to keep so secret? Friday morning, everything came to a head in a way none of us expected. I was having breakfast when Nathan appeared at my door. He was disheveled, carrying a duffel bag and sporting what looked suspiciously like the beginning of a black eye. Mom, he said, and then he was crying, my strong son sobbing like the child he'd once been. I pulled him inside, locked the door, and held him while he shook. She hit me, he finally managed. When I told her I knew about Jeffrey Chen, she completely lost it, started screaming, throwing things. When I tried to leave, He gestured to his eye. We're calling the police, I said firmly. No. You don't understand. She recorded herself afterward, crying, saying I attacked her. She's already texting her lawyer. If I call the police, she'll have me arrested. But I was done playing Andrea's game. I called Marcus, who immediately contacted a domestic violence advocate he knew. Within an hour, we had Nathan at the hospital, getting his injuries documented, with an advocate who specialized in male victims of domestic abuse. The fact that she's done this before changes everything, the advocate James explained. It establishes a pattern. Her credibility will be seriously damaged once this comes out. While Nathan was getting treated, my phone rang. Andrea. You poisonous witch, she hissed without preamble. You've turned my husband against me. I'm going to destroy you. By the time I'm done, you'll never see Nathan again, and I'll have every penny of that trust you've been hiding. Andrea, I said calmly, though my hands shook. Or should I say Andrea Paulson? How's Jeffrey Chen these days? The silence was deafening. Then, you don't know what you're dealing with. Neither do you. I'm not some isolated man you can manipulate. I'm a mother protecting her son, and I have resources you didn't count on. I have evidence. Fabricated evidence, just like with Jeffrey. But here's the difference, Andrea. We have real evidence. Security footage of you meeting with divorce lawyers months ago. Bank records showing illegal access to my safety deposit box. Your cousin Sarah has already been suspended pending investigation. And that second phone you keep at the gym, we know about that too. Another silence, longer this time. What do you want? She finally asked, all pretense dropped. I want you to leave my son alone. Sign the divorce papers Marcus is drawing up, take the settlement we're offering, and disappear from our lives. And if I don't? Then we pursue criminal charges for fraud, theft, and domestic violence. Your choice. She hung up without another word. The next few days were tense. Andrea tried every manipulation in her playbook. She called Nathan's employer claiming he was dangerous. She posted on social media about being an abused wife. She even showed up at my house at midnight, pounding on the door and screaming about her rights. I called the police that time, and they removed her. The officer, reviewing the restraining order Nathan had filed, shook his head. "Ma'am, I've seen this type before. Be careful. When they lose control, they can be dangerous." But Andrea had miscalculated. Her very expertise in manipulation became her downfall. The forensic accountant she'd hired? He recognized the patterns from the Chen case and quietly withdrew. Her lawyer friend? Wanted nothing to do with a potential fraud case. Even her cousin Sarah, facing federal charges for bank fraud, flipped immediately, providing evidence of Andrea's schemes. The final blow came from an unexpected source. Jeffrey Chen, hearing about the case through legal channels, reached out to offer his support. He provided documentation from his case that showed identical tactics, identical forged documents, even identical phrases in the accusations. Faced with overwhelming evidence and the possibility of serious jail time, Andrea finally capitulated. She signed the divorce papers, accepted a modest settlement that was far less than she'd hoped for, and agreed to leave the state. The day she left, Nathan and I stood in my driveway, watching her car disappear down the street. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said quietly. "For everything. For choosing her over you, for letting her ban you from Thanksgiving, for not seeing what she was. You were a victim, Nathan. Abuse doesn't always leave visible bruises. But you saw it. You tried to warn me. I saw it too late, and warning wouldn't have helped. You had to see it for yourself." He was quiet for a moment. "I don't know. How to trust anyone again. How to trust myself. That will take time, and therapy. Lots of therapy. Will you? Could we start having Sunday dinners again? Like we used to?" I smiled, tears pricking my eyes. "I'd like that." Melissa joined us, having extended her stay to help Nathan move back into his house. Andrea had taken only what the settlement allowed, leaving behind the life she'd tried to steal. "Next Thanksgiving," Melissa said, linking arms with both of us. "We're doing it at my place. No drama, no manipulation, just family." "Real family," Nathan agreed. As they helped me back inside, I thought about the journey from that awful Thanksgiving to now. It had been painful, frightening, and costly in every way. But it had also taught me something valuable. I'd spent years making myself smaller, quieter, less threatening. I'd accepted crumbs of attention and told myself to be grateful. But when my son was threatened, I'd found my voice again, found my strength. The security footage at Marcus's office had captured Andrea's crimes. But it had also captured something else. The moment I walked in that first Monday after Thanksgiving, determined to fight back. On that grainy footage was a woman I'd forgotten existed. Someone who didn't apologize for taking up space, who didn't accept being pushed aside, who protected the people she loved fiercely. That woman had been there all along, waiting. It just took Andrea's cruelty to wake her up. Later that evening, as I prepared dinner for my children for the first time in months, my phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. "Heard you vanquished. The witch. Mom would be proud." I smiled, remembering our mother's words one more time. Morrison women don't get pushed around. We push back. And sometimes, when we push back hard enough, we don't just reclaim what was taken from us. We discover strength we never knew we had. As Nathan and Melissa laughed in my kitchen, helping me cook and filling the house with warmth again, I realized the truth. Andrea had tried to destroy our family. Instead, she'd forced us to rebuild it stronger than before. She'd thought she was banning me from Thanksgiving, but really, she'd given me something to be truly thankful for. The reminder that I was worth fighting for, and a family that was worth saving. 1 year later, I stood in my kitchen at 5 in the morning, the familiar rhythm of Thanksgiving preparation surrounding me like a warm embrace. But everything about this morning felt different from that horrible day when I'd stood on Nathan's doorstep with unwanted pie. The kitchen was different, for one thing. Not my old kitchen in the house I'd shared with Richard, but the bright, airy space in my new townhouse, purchased 6 months ago with my own money, chosen for my own reasons. The turkey was already in the oven, filling the space with the scent of herbs and butter. On the counter, ingredients waited to become the dishes my family loved, but this year, there were additions. Lisa, Janet's daughter who'd helped us expose Andrea, was bringing her famous mac and cheese. Marcus Washington and his wife had promised their grandmother's cornbread pudding. Even Carla Rodriguez had accepted my invitation, insisting on contributing her mother's flan recipe. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "On my way to pick up the flowers. White and yellow roses, right?" I smiled at his attention to detail. The old Nathan, the one under Andrea's thumb, would never have remembered my favorite flowers. This, Nathan, the one who'd spent a year in intensive therapy, who'd learned to recognize manipulation and value genuine connection, was different. Not perfect, still healing, but present in a way he hadn't been for years. The doorbell rang at 6:30. Too early for guests, but I wasn't surprised to find Melissa on my doorstep, still in her pajamas under her coat, holding a carrier with 2 cups of coffee. "Figured you'd be up," she said, handing me a cup. "Thought you could use reinforcement." We settled at my kitchen island, the same morning light that had witnessed my solitary preparation last year now illuminating a shared moment. Melissa had extended her Thanksgiving visit to a full week, bringing the twins who were still asleep at her hotel. "Remember last year?" she asked, watching me roll out pie dough. "I was so angry I could barely function. I wanted to fly here and confront Andrea myself. I'm glad you didn't. It needed to happen the way it did." "You mean with you turning into a secret agent, uncovering her criminal past and saving Nathan from a monster?" I laughed. "When you put it that way, it sounds like a movie." "Mom, it basically was. Marcus still tells the story at legal conferences. The security footage, the secret phone, the previous victim coming forward. He says it's the most dramatic family law case he's ever handled." I shaped the pie crust with practiced hands, but my mind was elsewhere, thinking about the changes the year had brought. Not just the obvious ones, the new house, Nathan's divorce, Andrea's departure, but the subtle shifts in how I moved through the world. "I signed up for that writing class," I said suddenly. Melissa looked up from her coffee. "The memoir workshop? Mom, that's wonderful. I'm not sure I have anything worth saying." "Are you kidding? Your story could help so many people. Parents alienated from their children, people trapped in manipulation they don't recognize. You found your voice when it mattered most." The doorbell rang again. This time it was Nathan, arms full of flowers and followed by someone I didn't recognize, a tall woman with kind eyes and paint-stained fingers. "Mom, this is Sophie," he said, a slight blush coloring his cheeks. "She's the art therapist from my support group. She's joining us for dinner if that's okay." I'd known Nathan was dating someone but hadn't pressed for details. He'd been cautious, understandably, about new relationships. The fact that he was bringing her to Thanksgiving spoke volumes. "Of course it's okay," I said, extending my hand. "Anyone important to Nathan is welcome here." Sophie smiled, and I saw what Nathan must see, genuine warmth with no calculation behind it. "Thank you for having me. Nathan speaks so highly of you." He says you're the strongest person he knows. As they moved into the living room, Melissa nudged me. She seems nice. She seems real, I corrected. That's what matters. The morning progressed with a steady stream of arrivals. Patricia had flown in from Florida, bringing her new boyfriend, a retired professor who immediately bonded with my neighbor Arthur from the watercolor class, who I'd also invited. Janet arrived with Lisa and her husband, their arms full of side, dishes and wine. Marcus and his wife brought not only cornbread pudding but also their teenage daughter, who immediately gravitated toward the twins when they arrived, still rubbing sleep from their eyes. By noon, my townhouse was full of voices, laughter, and the controlled chaos of too many cooks in the kitchen. It should have been overwhelming, but instead, I found myself energized by it. This was what I'd been missing all those years. Not just family, but community. People who'd entered my life because of last year's crisis, but had stayed because of genuine connection. "Helen, where do you want the cranberry sauce?" Carla called from the kitchen. "Wherever you can find space." I called back, busy basting the turkey. Nathan appeared at my elbow. "Can I help?" A simple question, but weighted with meaning. The Nathan of 2 years ago would have been in the living room, letting others handle the meal preparation. This Nathan wanted to contribute, to be part of the creation rather than just consumption. Absolutely, the potatoes need mashing. We worked side by side in comfortable rhythm, and I was struck by how much he'd changed physically. The stress weight was gone, his shoulders no longer hunched in perpetual tension. He caught me looking and smiled. "What?" "Just happy you're here." "Mom, there's nowhere else I'd rather be." As the afternoon wore on, stories began to emerge. Patricia regaled the group with tales of our childhood Thanksgivings, including the year I'd tried to cook my first turkey at 16 and forgot to remove the giblet bag. Arthur shared his own holiday disasters, each one funnier than the last. Even Sophie contributed, describing the Thanksgiving she'd spent volunteering at a shelter, which led to her career in art therapy. "Sometimes the worst moments lead us exactly where we need to be," she said, glancing at Nathan with soft eyes. The comment hung in the air, profound in its simplicity. Around the room, I saw nods of recognition. How many of us had found unexpected blessings in our struggles? When we finally sat down to dinner, the dining room table extended to its fullest length and supplemented with a card table for the kids, I found myself overwhelmed with emotion. But before I could speak, Nathan stood, raising his glass. "I'd, like to say something," he began, his voice steady. "Last year, I failed the most important person in my life. I let someone convince me that love was control, that family was a burden, that the woman who'd sacrificed everything for me was somehow the enemy." His eyes found mine across the table. "Mom, you could have written me off. You had every right to. Instead, you fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself. You saw through the lies when I was blind to them. You saved my life in every way that matters." "Nathan," I started, but he shook his head. "Please let me finish. I've learned a lot this year. About manipulation, about abuse, about how easy it is to lose yourself in someone else's version of reality. But the most important thing I've learned is about strength. Real strength isn't controlling others or never showing vulnerability. Real strength is what you showed, Mom. Standing up when you've been knocked down. Protecting others even when you're hurting. Choosing love over bitterness." He raised his glass higher. "To Helen Morrison, who reminded us all that family isn't just about blood or obligation. It's about showing up, speaking truth, and never giving up on the people you love." The chorus of agreement and clinking glasses blurred through my tears. Melissa reached over to squeeze my hand, Patricia dabbed at her eyes with her napkin, and even Carla, tough former detective that she was, looked suspiciously misty. "Thank you," I managed. "But this isn't just my story. Every person at this table played a part in bringing us here. Janet, who connected me with Marcus. Marcus, who believed a frightened mother deserved justice. Carla, who uncovered the truth. Lisa, who risked Andrea's wrath to help us. Each of you chose to get involved when you could have looked away. That's what family really is, chosen or otherwise. People who stand together when it matters. The meal that followed was everything Thanksgiving should be. Warm, chaotic, filled. With multiple conversations, gentle arguments about politics that stayed respectful, children's laughter, and the satisfaction of full plates and fuller hearts. Sophie fit in seamlessly, her quiet humor balancing Nathan's newfound openness. The twins charmed everyone with their detailed explanations of their current obsessions, Minecraft and marine biology respectively. Even Arthur, usually reserved, was animated in discussion with Patricia's boyfriend about their shared love of mystery novels. As the afternoon stretched toward evening and the pumpkin pie made its appearance, alongside Carla's flan and various other desserts that had materialized, throughout the day, conversation turned to the future. "What happened to Andrea?" Lisa asked, voicing what I knew others wondered but were too polite to ask. Nathan's jaw tightened slightly, but he answered. "Last I heard, she was in Nevada, working at a casino, I think. Her lawyer sends the required check-ins for the restraining order." "Do you think she's doing it again?" Sophie asked quietly. "Finding another victim?" "Probably," Carla said bluntly. "People like her rarely change. They just find new hunting grounds." It was a sobering thought, but Nathan surprised me with his response. "I've actually been in touch with Jeffrey Chen, her previous ex-husband. We're working with a law firm that specializes in domestic abuse to create a database. Somewhere future victims can check if they suspect they're being targeted by someone with a history." "That's incredible," Marcus said, "turning your pain into purpose." "It was Mom's idea, actually," Nathan said. "She suggested it during one of our family therapy sessions. I had forgotten about that conversation, one of many we'd had in the structured environment of Dr. Williams's office, where Nathan and I had slowly rebuilt our relationship with professional guidance." "Speaking of ideas," Melissa chimed in, "Mom, tell them about your book." "It's not a book yet," I protested. "Just some essays for my writing class." "She's being modest," Melissa insisted. "Her instructor wants her to submit one to the newspaper for their Sunday magazine section. It's about recognizing emotional manipulation in family relationships." The table erupted in encouragement, everyone insisting I pursue publication. Their enthusiasm was touching, if slightly overwhelming. "One step at a time," I said. "I'm still figuring out how to tell the story without violating anyone's privacy." "Change the names, alter some details," Marcus suggested. "The emotional truth is what matters, not the specific facts." As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, each departure came with warm hugs and promises to stay in touch. This wasn't just holiday politeness. Over the past year, these people had become my chosen family, bonded by shared purpose and mutual respect. Nathan and Sophie were among the last to leave. As Sophie visited the restroom, Nathan lingered by the door. "Mom, I need to tell you something." My heart clenched, old fears surfacing. "What is it?" "I'm thinking of proposing to Sophie." The fear evaporated, replaced by cautious joy. "Already? You've only been dating 8 months." "I know, and I won't rush it, but she's everything Andrea wasn't. Honest, kind, independent. She encourages me to maintain my relationships, not cut them off. She has her own life, her own friends, her own goals. We're partners, not whatever twisted thing Andrea and I were." "Have you talked to Dr. Williams about this?" He smiled. "Extensively. She says I'm ready to trust my judgment again. But she also says to take it slow, which I will. I just wanted you to know that when the time comes, I'd like your blessing. Your real blessing, not the polite acceptance you gave with Andrea." "You know why I was polite with Andrea?" Because you wanted me to be happy. No, I corrected. Because I was afraid if I voiced my concerns, you'd choose her over me. Which is exactly what happened anyway, just later. Nathan's face crumpled slightly. I'm so sorry, Mom. Don't be sorry. Learn from it. If Sophie is the right person, she'll welcome your family, not compete with us. And if I have concerns, real ones, I'll voice them respectfully and you'll listen thoughtfully. That's how healthy families work. Sophie returned, and Nathan's face lit up in a way it never had with Andrea. The difference was stark and reassuring. After they left, Melissa and I tackled the dishes while Patricia supervised from a kitchen stool, too full to move but not too full to offer commentary. You know what strikes me most about today? Patricia said, gesturing with her wine glass. The diversity of people here, not just demographics but life experiences. Your attorney, your private investigator, your art teacher, Nathan's girlfriend, random neighbors. A year ago, your circle was so much smaller. She was right. My pre-Andrea. Life had been insular. Work colleagues, a few longtime friends, family. The crisis had forced me to reach out, to accept help, to forge new connections. In trying to isolate Nathan, Andrea had inadvertently expanded my world. I was thinking about Richard earlier, I admitted, elbow deep in soapy water. Wondering what he'd think of all this. Dad would be proud, Melissa said without hesitation. He always said you were stronger than you knew. Remember what he used to call you? His titanium magnolia. Soft on the outside, unbreakable at the core. I'd forgotten that nickname, one of many small memories that grief had temporarily obscured. He'd have handled Andrea very differently, Patricia mused. Probably would have seen through her immediately. Maybe, I agreed. Or maybe it needed to happen this way. Maybe I needed to discover my own strength, not rely on his. Later, after Patricia had returned to her hotel and Melissa had gone, to settle the twins, I found myself alone in my living room. But it wasn't the hollow loneliness of last year. The room still hummed with the energy of the day, evidence of life everywhere. Sophie's forgotten scarf on the couch. Arthur's wine glass still on the side table. Children's drawings stuck to my refrigerator with magnets. I picked up a photo from the mantel, one Melissa had taken earlier in the day. It showed the whole chaotic group attempting to fit into frame. Faces pressed together, some laughing, some mid-conversation, all radiantly alive. In the center, barely visible among the crowd, was me. But unlike the photos from past years where I seemed to shrink into the background, in this one I was fully present, taking up space, undeniably myself. My phone buzzed with a message from Nathan. Thank you for today, for everything. Sophie says you're her hero. Mine too. Then one from Marcus. Helen today reminded me why I went into family law, to protect families worth saving. Yours is definitely one of them. Another from Lisa. Best Thanksgiving ever. Mom says we're doing this again next year, right? And finally, one from Carla. You know I don't do sentimental, but today was something special. You've built something beautiful from something terrible. That's rare. I set the phone aside and moved to my writing desk, a new addition to the living room where I worked on my essays. The latest one was about rebuilding after betrayal, about the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation, about the power of chosen family. As I read over what I'd written, I realized it wasn't just about surviving Andrea's cruelty anymore. It was about what came after, the slow, difficult, beautiful work of building a life on your own terms. Outside, November rain began to fall, gentler than last year's harsh deluge. I thought about future Thanksgivings, about Nathan potentially married to Sophie, about grandchildren who would grow up knowing they were cherished, not pawns in someone's game, about the expanded family that would gather, bound not by blood or obligation, but by choice and genuine affection. Andrea had meant to destroy us. Instead, she'd forced us to examine what truly mattered, to speak truths we'd been too polite to voice, to fight for connections we'd taken for granted. In trying to isolate Nathan, she'd created a network of protectors. In attempting to diminish me, she'd revealed my strength. I returned to my essay, adding a final paragraph. The security camera in my attorney's office captured many things: a predator's careful planning, a son's desperate situation, a family's near destruction. But it also captured something else. The moment a woman walked through those doors ready to fight for her family. That woman was me, though I barely recognized her at first. She'd been there all along, waiting beneath years of accommodation and self-diminishment. Sometimes it takes a crisis to reveal who we really are. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to us becomes the catalyst for the best thing we become. I'm grateful for that camera, for the evidence it provided, but I'm more grateful for what it showed me about myself, that I was never the weak link in my family's story. I was the foundation, temporarily shaken but ultimately unbreakable. And on that foundation, we've built something new, something stronger, something worth protecting. This Thanksgiving, I'm grateful for many things, but most of all, I'm grateful for the woman I've become and the family, both born and chosen, who helped me remember who I was all along. I saved the document and closed my laptop. Tomorrow, I would submit it to my instructor, maybe even to the newspaper as Melissa suggested. But tonight, I simply sat in my living room, surrounded by the echoes of laughter and love, grateful beyond measure for the journey that had brought me here. The pie dish from last year sat in my kitchen, the one I'd eaten from alone in despair. Today, it had held one of 3 pies, all devoured by people who chose to share this day with me. The transformation of that dish from symbol of rejection to vessel of connection seemed to encapsulate everything about this journey. I was no longer the woman who stood on her son's doorstep, pie in hand, being turned away. I was the woman who opened her own door wide, welcoming a beautiful, messy, chosen family into a life rebuilt on truth, boundaries, and unshakable love. And for that, I was truly thankful. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.